Okay, here we go. So we are in our next class on chapter Chavches, chapter 28, and we're dealing with this issue of what happens when the negative thoughts are not happening when I'm just walking down the street or working or whatever it happens to be, but now they're happening when I'm actually davening. So I could say to myself, what in the world? Here I am, I'm davening, I'm praying to Hashem, I'm learning Torah, and these negative thoughts are happening. This is a sure sign that I am not succeeding, which could cause a person to get very upset, to get depressed, to even get to a point of yush, of giving up. And the Alter Rebbe comes along and tells us, no, you're missing the point completely. That is not the way of looking at things. The way to look at things is that when two people are wrestling, for example, what happens is that certain periods of time during the wrestling match, I don't know if anyone ever watched sumo wrestling. Anyone ever watch sumo wrestling? So I've been to a few sumo wrestling games, right? That they go there, it's a big day, it's a whole holiday in Japan, Tokyo. I went to one in Tokyo, went to one in Osaka. Anyway, so you spend the whole day there, and the two wrestlers, right? They come at each other, the whole thing before, and they pick up their legs, pick up their arms, they go, fine, throw some salt, everything's going on, and then bang, right? They go. But sometimes after the original bang, there's all these different maneuvers of how these guys are incredibly strong. Besides for being incredibly big, they happen to be very strong, and they have a lot of flexibility, believe it or not. And a lot of times they'll be like leaning onto each other, and they're holding each other's the waistband that they have, right? So they're holding onto it, and they're both just waiting for that 1 second that they feel that the opponent is going to lose his concentration, because it's all about concentration. And so at that moment, as soon as they feel it, they try to go for it. But as soon as they go for it, the other guy goes for it, what happens is that when the opposite side really puts himself into it, so then you put yourself into it. So the fact is that the Alter Rebbe says is that the fact that I am getting these negative thoughts in the middle of my davening or in the middle of my learning Torah is a very good indication that I'm actually succeeding. Because if I wasn't really accomplishing anything, then the Sitra Achar would not get involved. It just wouldn't care. So therefore, it would just say, he's not doing anything anyway. Let's go bring our game somewhere else. Who cares? We already won here, right? But Dafka specifically, when he is accomplishing, that's when the Nefesh HaBahamis really surges in. So that's something that a person has to take to heart, and therefore, instead of, and this is the last point that we brought from last class, instead of losing energy or giving up or anything like that, instead what he has to do is to even try harder, because it's a sign that he's really accomplishing, and not just try harder, but he has to do it in a way of simcha, in a way of happiness, because he sees that he is actually winning. That's the point, okay? So he says like this. Let's start again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down, 6 lines from the bottom of the page on page Lamed Hey. And therefore, kishen nefesh halokis misaemetz v'miskaberes leispalo. So when a person misaemetz miskaberes leispalo, when a nefesh halokis really tries very hard to win out in his davening, azai gama klipa miskaberes. So also at that point, the klipa also wants to win out. Kenegdo lebelbala, in order to do what? In order to confuse him, to mess up his mind. Bilbul is like confusing a person. Sometimes a person just gets all these thoughts and he doesn't know what to think and he doesn't know where to go with it, and he's like, he can't stop. And so he says, why? Because in order to throw just machshava zaras at him, in order to really make that impact on him. That's what's going on here. So he says, but we should not make the mistake of the rest of the world. Why? Because what many people want to say is that the fact that I am getting these negative thoughts in my head right now is an indication that my davening is worthless, that I'm really not doing anything, I'm not accomplishing. Because if I would have davened appropriately, benachon, in a good way, right? A person says to himself, oh, for sure, then there would be no machshava zaras going on at all, right? That's what would be going on. The emes haya kedivrehim. Next page. Im haisa nefesh achas levada. Hiya mispalelis v'hiya machshavas mehaheres machshavas zaras. So he says an amazing point here. He says the mistake that the rest of the world is making is that they're forgetting that we have two souls in ourselves. If we only had one soul, so then their explanation would be correct. Right here, my soul is trying to daven, and instead my soul is thinking about all these negative thoughts and all these things that I shouldn't be thinking about. So that would be an indication that I'm not accomplishing. But that's not the facts. The facts on the ground are that I have two souls. The fact that I have two souls means that my nefesh elokis is over here and my nefesh bahamis is over here, and they're both trying to win. That's the point that he's trying to bring out. Aval be'emes la'emiso, but the real truth is hein shtei nefashos. There are two souls, right? Shtei nefashos hanilchamim milchama zu im zu. And they're fighting one with the other. B'meichel shel adam, in the brain of the person. Kol achas cheptza v'retzaina limshol bo. Because each side wants to win, wants to control, wants to rule, right? And that his brain should be completely filled with it. That's the idea. In other words, each side, the Nefesh HaBahamis has his agenda, the Nefesh HaLokis has his agenda. And each side wants their agenda to come true. So they're going to put their whole efforts into it, no matter what. The Nefesh HaBahamis is going to try to knock me down and cause me all these problems. And try, what's the ultimate goal of the Nefesh HaBahamis? The ultimate goal of the Nefesh HaBahamis is to cause me to give up. My animal soul wants me to give up. Because once I'm no longer in the game, right, I can't accomplish anything. The ultimate win is when I give up. The Nefesh Eloki says, no, there's no such thing as giving up. You can't give up. As long as you're in the game, you could still win. That's the objective here. So with that in mind, the Nefesh Bahamis is trying from every angle. How am I going to get this guy to give up? Let's throw this machshava zara, let's throw that machshava zara, let's try to nail him in this way, nail him in that way, and then if nothing else works, I'll just at least try to convince him the fact that he's having all these machshava zaras is a proof that he's not accomplishing anything. So to that, the Alter Rebbe says, no way. That's not the way to look at things. The way to look at things is that the fact is that I'm succeeding. Because if I wasn't succeeding, the Nefesh HaBahamis would not even get in the ring with me. The fact that the Nefesh HaBahamis is throwing all these bombs at me, all these missiles at me, is because I am succeeding. Otherwise, he wouldn't care. So my job is to try even harder. That's it. And not to give up, no matter what. That's the goal.